Hi team, welcome to the final video regarding market failure. The type of market failure that we're looking at this time round is called asymmetric information. And so once again, you need to understand how asymmetric information leads to market failure, and then understand the way that governments can then use policies to obviously try to reduce or remove asymmetric information such that they can reduce or remove market failure, which will ultimately promote outcomes in society and maximize allocative efficiency. So asymmetric information, put simply, is a situation where there's a transaction and one party's got more information than the other party. If you break down the word asymmetric information just for one moment, take the word symmetry. Symmetry implies it's the same on both sides. So asymmetry implies that one side is different to another. So if we're talking about asymmetric information, we're talking about a situation where one side has more information than another side. When we're talking about sides, we're talking about transactions. We mean that buyers and sellers are in a situation where one party has more information than another party. So take a situation where the seller may have more information than the buyer, or the buyer may have more information than the seller. Now, the issue with this situation or these situations is that one party has the power to influence prices. We call this fair value pricing, and it creates a situation where the fair value pricing is incorrect. It's either inflated or it's too low. And as a result, that then leads to an inefficient allocation of resources. So to make sense of this, we're going to look at two scenarios. The first scenario is where the seller has more information than the buyer. And I want you to imagine for a moment that you've just got your P plates and you're off to a car dealership, a secondhand car dealership, and you're going to buy your first car, right? Now, for most of us in that situation as the buyer, we're probably going to have less information related to the cars compared to the seller. Look, there'll be some situations where I'm sure many of you have some, really bespoke or niche information about cars, and you can look at a vehicle and call it and say, nah, this vehicle is worth X. But for the average human, like myself, the reality is I don't have much information about vehicles. And so in that scenario, the seller is going to have more information than me. Now, we're imagining that there's no government intervention. And so if you're the seller in that instance, you're not going to tell me about any of the issues the car has. You're not going to tell me about its prior history. You're not going to tell me if it's been in any accidents. You're not going to tell me anything negative about the vehicle, because the moment that you do, you're sharing your information with me. And ultimately, I'm going to use that information to try and reduce the price. So any information that you have about the vehicle that is obviously going to, imply that it's not a great car, you're going to hold that close to your chest, and you won't disclose that to the buyer. Ergo, you're in that situation where you've got more information than the buyer, and you're going to obviously negotiate such that you walk away with a price that's higher than if I had the same information as you. And this goes on all the time. So the seller knows more about the car, and as a result, the seller can distort the price. We call it fair value pricing. They're going to try and bargain for a higher price. Obviously, you as the buyer are going to try and bargain for a lower price. The car, however, once you've purchased it, it breaks down on you, right? And you think, oh, bugger, the seller obviously knew more about the vehicle than what they intended. They've obviously pulled one over me, and unfortunately, I've bought a vehicle that we would refer to as a lemon. So if you're buying a lemon, you're buying a not so great car. And so the issue there is that I have paid too much money for this vehicle. I've paid too much money relative to the utility that it's actually going to offer me. And if I had have had all the information, I obviously would have tried to pay a lower number. And so what we see here is it signals to the market to say, hey, if you want to allocate your lemon to the market, you're going to get a higher price than what it's actually worth. And so that encourages more lemons to come into the market to then be sold in that secondhand market space. And as a result, there's an over allocation of lemons to the secondhand car market. And that is the distortion in resource allocation that leads to market failure. Okay, so if you want to break it down, guys, these are basically your 4 dot points. Seller knows more about the car and can distort fair value pricing. The car could break down after it's been purchased because the seller obviously hasn't been honest about any of the defects associated with it. This leads to the buyer to pay too much money, and then leads to an over allocation of resources towards the second-hand car market. That is your setup, okay? I want to look at the other situation where the buyer has more information than the seller, such that they're able to manipulate fair value pricing. And the best example that we can use in this space is insurance. All right. So if you're looking to get insurance, let's say health insurance, you have way more knowledge about your health relative to the health insurer that is trying to sell you the health insurance. And again, assuming no government intervention, okay? So consumers know more about their health than insurance providers, and they can be dishonest. So as a consumer, I can be dishonest. There might be a box that I need to tick that says, do you smoke, yes or no? I might be a smoker and I tick no. No, I'm not a smoker. Now, if I was honest about being a smoker, I would assume that my insurance premium that I need to pay is likely to be higher, right? And that goes for any sort of, underlying health issues that you might already have. You can just lie and say, no, I don't smoke. And if the insurance provider knew that about you, that you did in fact smoke, they would likely charge you a higher premium. So this leads to producers not charging enough money. Because they're working on the information that you've given them, and you've told them, hey, I don't smoke, so cool, I get a lower premium. And so this leads to an over-allocation of resources towards the insurance market. The over-allocation in the sense that you're not buying the right policy for your situation because you're not being honest about your situation. So put simply, I'm a smoker, I tick no to smoking on my insurance policy. The number that I need to pay is obviously lower than what it would have been. The fair value pricing has been distorted, and so there is an over-allocation of the particular policy that I've purchased because basically it's fabricated, it's not based in truth, and that distorts the allocation of resources. So that's the flip side, guys. That's the other scenario. So asymmetric information, we've already talked about that, what that is, and basically this is me just trying to summarize it for you, okay? So in the used car market, sellers will have greater knowledge of the car compared to the buyer, including any faults. The seller may choose to be dishonest about the fault, and the buyer may end up paying more than they would have had they have known about the fault. This means that asymmetric information has led to an over-allocation of resources in the used car market, and that market fails to deliver outcomes that are in the best interest of the society. So generally a 3-marker, explain how asymmetric information leads to market failure, and this is something that you might use. I would always suggest you set the scene with the definition of the particular type of market failure that you've been asked about. So you need to now come in and understand, well, okay, it's great that that's happening. What can the government do about it? And here are some solutions that you could speak to. So number one, government regulation, basically making it illegal for you to be dishonest, whether you're the buyer or the seller, and providing protections for the consumer or the producer, depending on the particular situation that we're talking about. So the ACCC in Australia, I suggest you give them a Google. They're the main body that really oversee the regulations that are in place to protect. I'm going to talk about consumers in this respect. Protect the consumer in terms of their interaction with sellers and reducing asymmetric information. So it might be illegal to mislead consumers about a product, right? You have to be honest about, in this case, I've got the energy rating that you must disclose, right? Because that's going to have an impact on your energy bills. If you buy a vehicle, a secondhand vehicle, very often they come with a warranty such that if the car breaks down, then the cost of repairing the car is covered by the producer. Now, if the producer sells the car with a warranty, they're going to be honest with you, because if you do in fact decide to buy it and it breaks down, they're going to have to pay for it through the warranty. So they're going to be honest with you because there's no advantage to them selling you a car being dishonest, because ultimately they pay if the car breaks down anyway. The other one is government advertising that promotes information about products to ensure consumers are more informed. Advertising around the benefits or risks of smoking. Now, I know smoking is a negative externality of consumption, but the idea here is that if the government is able to provide you with more information about smoking, you're going to be more informed, such that you can then go into the market and make a more informed decision. In essence, the buyer and the seller have similar knowledge about the product, such that the pricing is not distorted. So kind of tricky, this one. It's a little bit left of center compared to the others. I do like the government regulation as the solution. And I do suggest that you give the ACCC a Google, because there's a bit there that you can learn about how they go about managing. But basically the big one here is using regulation and legislation to force parties into being honest about the knowledge of the product that they're either buying or selling. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Good luck. Thank you.